Hello and welcome to the Pandaverse. I'm Elgon. I'm here with Christine Gabriel, and
Hey guys.
today we have Robyn Roste. She's from Vancouver, Canada, and she's a marketing maven, among other things. She also writes books. We're going to be talking to her, and we're also going to talk about retail hell. So Robyn, why don't you introduce yourself to everybody?
Sure. Hello, thank you for having me. My name is Robyn. I live in Canada. It is raining, so that's about the summation of my everyday life. Yeah, I work in a little tiny blue office, as you can see, and I stare out the window at the rain and I write. And it is as simple as that. I do work in marketing, and most of the time it's like just figuring out how can we make this message really connect with people, and like it's the biggest puzzle and it's the most fun challenge.
I was going to ask what it is about the U.S. Northwest and British Columbia that causes people to write, but I think you answered that. It rains all the time, right?
Yeah.
Except for the summer, and then it rains some.
It rains like a little less.
Pandamoon has at least two authors that I can think of that live around the Vancouver area, and then we have an author that lives in Northern California, Southern Oregon, and another one that lives in Washington State. Well, she's closer to Idaho. So that seems to be a pretty fertile area for people who write. Yeah. So if you want to be a writer, move there.
Yeah, to the air, guys, go do it.
Yeah, you'll catch it.
Tell us, what brought you to Pandamoon?
I've been looking for a home for my book for the past year, and got connected with Pandamoon at PitMad on Twitter 2 PitMads ago. So I think it was this spring in 2020. So that's how we first connected. And I checked out Pandamoon, and I asked different authors how they liked working with Pandamoon. I spoke with the publishers, met them, and I just loved everything about Pandamoon. I had a really good gut feel about it. It's such an interesting, warm, quirky family. Like, I was just drawn to it, and that's the short story.
Yeah, nobody's normal here.
No, you're gonna fit right in. Well, welcome to Pandamoon. We're really glad that you joined us. We do have a very diverse, amazing family, and it's something that has just grown exponentially over time. And if there's one thing I can say, I am proud to be a
panda. Yeah, I love that I get to be a panda. That's exciting.
Yeah, Christine and I were in the original class, the original authors, a long time ago. So we've seen everything. We know where all the skeletons are.
Yep.
That is good to know.
Yeah, there's still a few of us around. We got Elise, Lee Goldenberg. You got Jason Beam.
Jeff, right?
Yeah, Jeff. Jeff's in the original class. Yeah. He was kind of added on at the end, but yeah, he's an original. Michelle Bellin King.
Yeah.
Yeah, yep. She's still with us. So actually, the best-selling book that we have is Jason Beam's.
Way to go, Southbound.
It's still selling a lot.
Yeah, a lot. Yeah.
It's a good book. He's also from the West Coast area, kind of.
Yeah.
I mean, he's kind of from Kentucky and New Orleans. He travels around a lot. But his book is set on the West Coast. You said you had a background in marketing and you have a background in writing. What suggestions would you have for a new writer?
I took some training in writing, but and I definitely feel like I did a Bachelor of Journalism, and I do feel like it did teach me how to write really well. I thought I was an okay writer before that. It taught me really to write very tight, get your ideas across efficiently. And I think, though, really where I really started to take off, though, was when I just wrote. So if you're thinking about being a writer, just get writing. Like, stop wishing for it, stop wondering about it, just start writing. Maybe you're not going to publish your original first drafts and that, but you just got to get through all those really bad first drafts so that you can get to the good stuff. And I think that's where, when I just dug in implemented what I'd learned at school, then I really did start improving. And so over the years, now it's been over a decade that I've been a professional writer, I've really seen it makes a big difference. The more you write, the better you get.
Yeah, I started off in journalism too. I kind of branched out into a lot of different areas while I was in college. So I was in broadcast journalism, radio and television production, advertising, public relations. So I was like all over the map. From advertising and public relations, I got interested in marketing.
Tell us about this website, Robyn. I hear it was voted, what is it, 100 for the best websites for writers?
Yeah, there's a website called The Right Life, and actually it's a fantastic resource for, brand new writers, but also seasoned writers. They just have a ton of good information, and every year they do a roundup of the best 100 websites for writers, and I made the list this year, and it was like a huge honor. I had been hoping to get on that list for several years now, so I was pretty excited when they let me know.
Well, congratulations. What website is this so we can share it with our viewers?
Yeah, my website is my name, robynroste.com. And there I write about marketing, I write about freelance writing, writing in general, publishing, podcasting, blogging. I think that pretty much covers it. So it's a lot of writing.
So everybody head to her website. New writers, if you need some great information, you can definitely find it at this site. So head on over there and check it out.
You mentioned that you belong to some groups. I think that's important for new writers too, to join writing groups and attend conferences and workshops. Just basically get other people to write, to read what you're writing. When you write, everything makes sense to you, but the trick is making it make sense to somebody else. That's the hard part. What I learned in journalism was basically writing with the inverted pyramid, where the most important things first, and then you go down the story and the least important things at the end, so that when you're publishing something in a newspaper or a magazine, they can cut off the last parts of it to make it fit. And the last parts aren't as important as the first part. That's what they teach you. That's not the way you write a book, though.
No, not at all.
There's a trick to both. Now, when I was in college, I was writing the Great American Novel, which never got published. I was doing that while I was in journalism classes, but I found that any writing that I did helped the journalism, and any journalism writing I did helped the process of writing a book as well. Anything that you write, I used to tell people, even if you write a shopping list, write something every day. And that's not saying that you have to write something every day, but if you want to get your ideas flowing and everything, you have to be communicating with that part of your creativity every day.
Yeah, I agree. It's a muscle. You just have to keep working it. Yeah, you can't force yourself to write the most elegant prose maybe every day. Yeah, a shopping list might be all you've got in you, but still, it's just keep exercising.
Successful authors also have to learn marketing skills, and you need to start selling your book before you even write it. I mean, you really do. You have to build your author's brand, and you have to start building a following even before you've written anything, even before you publish anything. You form a street team. You can get people to read what you're writing, little early drafts and everything, and gain a lot of support from those people. Those people tend to be with you forever. They tend to be your friends anyway, to begin with. But as you grow, you start bringing in a lot of people that you didn't know at the beginning, and they start helping you along, and you meet other authors, and the author community is very supportive. I mean, there's a few people that are outliers out there, but I really think that the community as a whole wants everybody to succeed, and we're really not in competition with one another. And, I don't think readers understand that as much as the writers do. I mean, we want people to succeed in writing, and we want our friends to succeed in writing. I mean, they're going to write reviews for your book. It's a quid pro quo type situation. You write reviews for their books. Everybody gets a little bit of success drawn from it that way. That's really how you market a book, other than putting a full page ad in a major newspaper when a book launches, which only works to a certain extent anyway.
Yeah,
And
expanding your network
it's
is
way too expensive for a new writer to do on their own.
I would absolutely agree. You know, it's something we've preached, I think, since day one, in Pandamoon, is that you have to build that brand. You have to go out, expand that network. You have to, know what crowd you're writing for. You have to know your fans. You have to stay loyal to them and they'll stay loyal to you. There's so many things that you should do and take upon yourself because, back in the good old days, publishers used to do a lot of the marketing for their authors, but today there are so many books in the mix that you have to rise above the noise and you have to help market yourself and build that brand. Take every avenue that you possibly can if you really want to be successful. And I think that, sometimes you watch movies and you see things that aren't necessarily how the world works anymore. I think that some people have maybe forgotten or have a skewed view of how things are done nowadays. And it's really nice, with Pandamoon, Zara's taking the time out of her busy schedule and any new author that comes on, she actually teaches them classes on how to market themselves and build their brand and get out there and expand that network. And I tell you what, it really helps so many of our authors. And Robyn, you coming on board is just, it's like icing on the cake. I mean, we're really glad to have you.
Sarah and Alan are marketing people too. So, I mean, It's a big help having them for a sounding board and some feedback. I think, most authors tend to be a little bit shy and reclusive. I think that's kind of a stereotype because successful authors have to get past that at some time. And with me, I think it was selling cars for a summer. I got out of my shell doing that. Christine and I also work in retail. So you're not going to be successful in retail without selling and being able to sell stuff. And to be able to sell stuff, you have to believe in what you're selling. So you have to believe in yourself as an author and believe in yourself as a producer of books and somebody who has ideas that other people want to read or share. You have to get past the shyness that most of us have because most authors would prefer to do nothing but sit back and write and then cash the checks when they come in. And those two aren't connected without the marketing in between.
I mean, it sounds pretty nice, to be just a recluse writing away in your room, but it's not what happens anymore.
That's not it. That's not the world. There's millions of books being published every year on Amazon. That's not saying that they're high quality books, but I think a good percentage of them are good books. They may be self-published. They come from small publishers. That's the majority of the books that are published now on Amazon. So if you're buying books from Amazon, a lot of times you're buying the book directly from the author. Amazon's just creating a marketplace for it. You've got to sell your book on Amazon to get it up in the rankings enough so other people can see it. That's the real challenge with doing anything with Amazon. Back in 2012 or so, when Christine and I were unpublished by Pandamoon, we were working on our books, and the market was a lot smaller back then. Even though digital publishing was a thing, and everybody was getting Kindles and other e-readers, there's a lot of competition going on even then, and it's only gotten worse, being able to be heard above the noise. And the way to do that is that you have to generate your own buzz. You have to be able to get your own street team out there talking about your book and sharing your book with other people. That's basically what I've learned over the years with Pandamoon. You've got to carry business cards. When you go to the grocery store, give your business card to people, as you're walking up and down the aisles. You got to maintain an active presence on social media. People have got to know how to reach you and communicate with you, because this is important for a reader who's just discovering your book, is being able to talk to the author about things. That's a golden opportunity to talk to somebody. The hot spot right now in publishing are the small publishers who spend more time paying attention to the products.
I agree. Absolutely. Robyn, what would you say is the best marketing for a writer, if you could give them any piece of advice when it comes to marketing, what would you say?
Well, most of my advice is for freelance writers, and I tell them have a network of other writers. And honestly, I think that's the best marketing. This probably applies to authors as well, that, yeah, you do. The rising tide lifts all boats. You lift each other up. It seems upside down in a way because, oh, well, aren't they a competitor? But really, they're your colleague and they're your friend, and they're there to either, like in freelance writing, for example, you can pass each other work that maybe isn't a good fit for you. You can pass it to someone else, and then you've given them a referral, which is very helpful to them. They can do the same for you. They can help you figure out maybe what to charge for something that you haven't had experience with, or they can kind of guide you. Perhaps there's a better fit for you somewhere else. They can kind of point you in the right direction. And it's really, really important to just have their guidance, to put yourself out there so that you're in front of the right people, because it can be really just confusing and mysterious. Like, how do I find my readers? How do I find these people who are gonna buy my stuff? And really, it's, yeah, honestly, I think the help from more experienced people is my number one marketing tip, which seems like a no-brainer, but so many people just go at it alone and feel completely isolated. So yeah, build a network. They're going to be a very, very important help. Then, I mean, there's all kinds of tactics, of course, too, but I think first you need that foundation.
I agree, 100%.
Our other topic today that we were going to work on is retail hell, which both Christine and I have decided that there needs to be a book titled Retail Hell. And maybe we'll write it, maybe we won't. We've both worked in retail. It's different types of retail. I mean, honestly, I worked for big box retailers pretty much. The biggest part of working at a retailer is the customer service element, because if you don't have customers, you're not going to have a business.
Right.
You know, the majority of customers are good people. And the problem is when you work in retail for an extended period of time, you sometimes start seeing the world through the distortion of all the bad experiences that you've had. And you forget that most of your customers are good people. And sometimes there's honest mistakes that are made, you know, by the customers and by the store. A couple of examples that come to mind is when I worked in Connecticut, we had a store next door that was called Pace. I think they were bought out by a larger company, but you know, they don't exist anymore. But they were kind of like a Sam's Club or a Costco. In fact, I think Costco may have actually bought them. Exactly the same thing as a membership warehouse. And it was right next door to the Home Depot. And Home Depot hadn't been in Connecticut very long. It was just probably like a year or two. So we're kind of like the new kids on the block, and people were still discovering us. I got called to the customer service desk. An older gentleman wanted to return some snow tires. He decided that he didn't want them. Home Depot didn't sell snow tires. And the girl at the customer service desk is trying to explain this to him, that he didn't buy the tires at Home Depot. And he was insistent that he did. So I come up front, and there's a line forming behind this guy because he's taken up the girl's attention, and somebody else had to go over. The front end manager had to go over and open up another register at the return desk to try to take some of the pressure off. So I go over and I said, well, do you have a receipt for it? And he said, sure, I got a receipt. He hands me the receipt, and I looked at it and I said, okay. So I wrote down a generic SKU that we had at the time, and I said, go ahead and refund them under the SKU. The girl looked at me like, I said, just go ahead and do it. I knew that I wasn't going to get in trouble for doing that. First of all, there's nobody in the line behind this guy that's going to complain about me giving him a refund for snow tires. And number two, I'm going to take the snow tires over next door and get the money back to put into our petty cash for it. So, because I'm going to end up paying for it out of petty cash. So there's no reason to say no to that customer in that situation. But, you know, the first person that the customer encountered at the customer service desk didn't have the authority to do what I decided to do. Another example, a little old lady came in with some spoiled milk from Pace. and wanted to get her money back. So it was kind of the same thing. I mean, we don't sell milk, but I'm not going to argue about it. At that time, I was training a guy that was hired in from another company who was supposed to be a trainee on the fast track to be a district manager. And he's following me around. He's shadowing me around. So I essentially training him. And he pulled me aside afterwards and he goes, "You don't have to ask anybody's permission to do that." I said, "Was it the right thing to do?" And he goes, "Yeah." I said, "That's all the permission I needed." I mean, if I can justify to my superiors, if they ever question it, why I did something, I mean, I'm not even going to complain. Oh, is it $3.50, $2.50 for a gallon of milk? Nobody's going to complain about it. That's petty cash. The snow tires, I knew I was going to get the money back on that. So that's not a problem. Now, one situation that we had was a kitchen cabinet order. It was a $5,000 kitchen cabinet order that got screwed up from the manufacturer. And the guy's house is being held up from closing, the new house they're building, waiting on the kitchen. And they're getting kicked out of their apartment. We're in a bad situation because they trusted us to get the cabinets right. And it wasn't our fault, it was the manufacturer's fault. And the manufacturer couldn't get the cabinets to the customer in enough time. And they're going to be put out on the street, basically. They can't move into their house because it's not been approved, because you have to have the cabinets to get the plumbing certified and all the electrical certified. What we did is I negotiated with the manufacturer that they were going to take the cabinets back from us and they were going to expedite the order. And we ended up putting the customers up in a hotel for 2 weeks until we got the cabinets installed. And the manufacturer paid for it.
Wow.
I mean, I did what I had to do. That's a lot of money involved there. And yes, I got partners on it. I told the store manager what I was doing, because it's going to hit our bottom line first, and then it's going to get credited back from the manufacturer. These are the kinds of things that managers have to do. They have to make a decision. And we were told by Bernie Marcus, who founded the company, that it's not our money, it's his money. So just take care of the customer. Now, having said all that, there are times when you have customers that are trying to take advantage of the system and try to game things. I think Christine gets more involved in these types of situations than probably I ever did. But usually when a customer says, the customer's always right to you, they're trying to scam something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we had a gentleman come in. For those that don't know, I have worked and managed a pawn shop in Milwaukee, Ohio, for 17 and a half years. Very long time. So I've seen my fair share of, interesting things. I have my fair share of interesting stories. But, there are those customers who will try to come in and do the customer is always right. One time I had a gentleman come in and he went to one of my male employees and presented him with 3 watches, name brand watches. And, when it comes to watches, there are a lot of fake merchandise out there. So that is something that we have to be, very careful with when taking in. So these 3 watches were indeed fraudulent watches. The gentleman got very upset and told my employee how dumb he was and how ignorant he was being. That's when I decided to jump in, and I tried to calm down the situation. And unfortunately, when people are trying to game the system, they do not calm down. They just tend to get a little more angry, which in turn, you really do have to step up and decide how you want to handle a situation such as that. So I took the transaction on myself. I checked out, the watches, and they were indeed not authentic. So I passed them back to him. And of course, I got the customer is always right. And I just politely said to him, "Sir, in this case, the customer is not right, which the customer is you. And unfortunately, I'm going to have to ask you to leave now." And then that's where your customer can make a choice. They can continue to push the issue, which if that happens, then that's when you have to make harder decisions on how you're going to react to this and how you're going to solve this issue, or the customer could simply leave. A lot of times that's not what happens. So, it is interesting having a customer who will try to game the system, because especially nowadays, it puts you in a very risky situation. With social media, you have to be very careful with what you say, because if you say something in the wrong tone, or you say something out of anger, and you're not professional, then they take to social media, and they will, say things about your business and say things about the people that work there. And so it's one of those very, it's a very fine line that you have to walk. And so, that's something I've had to learn over the years, how to walk that very, very fine line. I can tell you that when we first went on, I had a gentleman pull in his huge semi truck, and we have a pretty small parking lot. He came in, and he was having problems getting, it's called a com check. It's what they basically cash to live on while they're on the road. Well, he was in dire need of money. He needed food, he needed, fuel, he needed a place to rest. And he was desperate. And I kid you not, he took his leg off and he slammed it on my counter, and he wanted to do a pawn loan on his leg. Now, that's another interesting thing, because your heart bleeds for these customers. It bleeds. You want to help them out in any way possible, but unfortunately, you can't take a leg. You can't take a leg for a loan. He's going to need his leg to walk and to thrive with. But, you try to find a positive in the situation, and you try to help that customer out in any way you can, So the first thing I did was I apologized that I couldn't take his leg, and I explained to him that I knew he would need his leg, but I noticed a nice shiny gold necklace on around his neck, and I was like, you know what? See that shiny gold necklace right there? I was like, if you can live without that for a couple weeks, why don't we go ahead and do a loan off of that? He didn't even think about it. So guess what we did? We did the loan on his necklace. It's not on his leg. So it's just, working in retail, you really do have to look past the negative, because there is so much of it. And especially in today's world, all you see is negativity on the internet. You see it, when you're in grocery stores, you see it everywhere, but if you can be that shining light and just look past the negative and try to help people and try to be positive, and it's amazing how thankful people are for your simple kindness. It's, and I think a lot of times people who work in retail forget that important fact. All these, like you said, Elgon, they see all these negative things thrown at them, and it's hard to take your mind off of the negative. They forget about the good customers, the good, hard-working people out there with the positive, experiences that you've been given. It's something you cannot forget. You have to remember there are more good people out there than the negative ones. And you just have to, treat everybody that way, no matter what.
I've had customers threaten me with hammers. I had a guy pull a knife on me one time. A guy pulled a gun on a cashier and wanted her to empty her till. And what happened next was somebody at one of the desks saw that happening, got on the intercom, and used a security page that was not appropriate for the situation, because we had a security page for the situation, but they used the wrong one. They used the one that a customer's injured. And every manager and department head in that store rushed to the front end. The guy got spooked and ran out. That is not what you want happening. You don't want a bunch of people rushing toward a guy that's holding a gun on a cashier. It was scary for her. And, when the police came, they asked if she could describe the guy, and basically all she could describe was the gun. I mean, that's what you're going to get out of that situation. And we had the guy on camera, and we had a pretty good shot of him. I gave a description of the guy too, and they were able to identify him, and we had to go to a lineup and the whole thing like that. But I mean, you have situations like that happen, and there's scary situations. We had, I told a story, I think it was on the last show, that we had a lady that got caught in an exit door because she was moving too slow. We had a customer that was almost killed by a pallet falling out of the overhead. If you work in retail, you will not have a ordinary day. There's no such thing.
Never have an ordinary day.
So, I mean, if you like to have predictable routine, you don't ever want to work in retail. That's usually not what happens. But if you like having to think on your feet and having every day is a new challenge, you're in contact directly with the public. And that makes for infinite variables in your life. And if you like that kind of excitement and challenge, that's what retail's for. And I think I've said this before too. I think it's a good proving ground for writers. If you want to work on dialogue, there's no better place to work on dialogue.
Characters.
You hear everything. You hear the strangest conversations. You'll pick up a fragment of a conversation as walking by. It'll click over in your mind. You'll go, that would be an excellent opening sentence for a book.
Yeah, and character names. I get a lot of my customers with really unique names, and I'm like, do you mind if I take your name and write it down? And they'll look at me a little strange. And I'll be like, look, I'm a writer. I just need your name.
My name has made it into a couple of books for authors that I know. So one of them actually used it backwards because I told him a story about when I was in grade school. My mom wanted to write my name on my shirts with like a magic marker. I don't know why, but I tried to avoid wearing those, especially when I had gym class. But there was a time that I wore one, and when I had gym class that day, and I'm walking around with my name on my T-shirt, the only one in the whole class, and everybody's laughing at me. And of course, I was happy when the coach told us to, we were going to play like a basketball game, and half of us were skins and half of us were shirts. And I was on the skins team, so I was glad about that. But then I put the shirt on afterwards, to go back in the locker room, and I put it on wrong side out. So my name was backwards on it. And everybody started calling me Noble. So there's actually a character in one of Jeff Messick's books named Noble.
Perfect. That's awesome. But yeah, I'm going to throw this out to our viewers. You work in retail. Let's hear some stories, Let's hear your most interesting customer experience that you've had while working in retail.
I've got one. It's kind of unusual. Before I moved out to the West, I live in Vegas now, but I worked in Florida for one of the largest food chains in the Southeast. It's called Publix. If you've ever been to Florida, you'll see Publix stores. Great place to buy sub sandwiches, is in a Publix. They have really good subs. In fact, I want to go to Florida next year to my great niece is getting married. And I want to go to Florida just so I can stop by Publix and eat a sub. I mean, they're that good. There was a gentleman that used to come in the store, and every once in a while he'd stand up front and just break into song. And he had a really good voice. He would serenade us. And it was like the customers would like look at the guy if they've never been in the store before we did it. But everybody that worked on the front end was used to it. And we would go ahead and continue our business and everything, but sometimes the customer would go, "Is this normal?" Yeah, he does it a lot. He's good. He's got a good voice, right? Yeah. But can you imagine the nerve that it took for that guy to do that the first time.
Right.
But yeah,
Yeah.
but I mean, he knew he had a good voice. So nobody's going to complain. They complain if I sing, but
Aw.
yeah, you never know. You never know
You
what's
never
going to
know.
happen
You
in
don't.
retail.
Hmm. I've got videos of, I had a customer come in and he started playing the guitar. And another customer came in and he started singing. It was Johnny Cash. So I actually posted that on my Facebook page of them two singing together. They had never met each other, and now they are friends, just simply because one was playing the guitar and one just decided to sing. So, it's kind of amazing, when you work in retail. Like you said, the strangest things happen, and you can create such great friendships out of nowhere, out of just randomness.
I had a regular customer that he came in. He usually came through my line when I was checking out, and he would be in the store almost every day. He'd come in there to buy lunch, and he was mentally challenged, but I think he had like a type of autism. And he worked for the Goodwill store, which was close to where our store was. And he would come in every day, and he was always very well dressed. It was casual, but he's well dressed. He's very clean and very neat. He would always call me Matthew. Joey was his name. And he had a different name for everybody that worked in the store. And he remembered the names that he invented for the people as opposed to their real names. There was like one exception in the store that he actually called somebody by their real name. So I guess to him, they looked like, their real name. But I mean, it was amazing. And he remembered it from time to time. They would come in the store. Somebody would leave the store to go to another store to work. They would come back. He would remember them from, the previous time they'd been there.
I had a guy come in one time, and I was having a rough day. It was when I was going through a divorce, so we all have our bad days too. Working in retail, you just gotta trust through it. Well, I think he could sense I was having a bad day. He began to tell me what he did for a living. He worked in a nursing home, and he worked in like the dementia and Alzheimer's ward. And I got interested immediately because, to me that would be, it takes a special kind of person to do that, to help people, who have dementia and Alzheimer's. And I asked him, what do you love about that? Everybody loves something about the job. What do you love? He goes, you know what I love? He goes, I love going in every day. He goes, and I will talk to somebody. He goes, and we'll talk about their life. He goes, and I'll say something to them like, I remember when you used to be a beautiful model, and even if, like, say it was a woman and she hadn't been, for a brief moment she got to live a life of just amazing things. He would tell her, you were a model, and you did these fashion shows, and he would tell them these stories because they would obviously forget them. He goes, to see their eyes light up. He goes, and to see them smile and look off into the distance and kind of realize that maybe they did have this fantastical life. He said he would go and, he said a lot of the residents there, their family never visited them, ever. And so he would become like their family. He would make sure to go and visit them every day and tell them these fantastical stories of their old lives. And he said when he left, he just knew with his whole heart that those people would go to sleep with a smile on their face. And I was just blown away by his kindness towards people, and how I could see that, those people, they had him. And so you will meet people in retail that, you're going to remember stories like that forever, and just how kind people really can be.
What a great premise for a book.
I know, I agree. Yeah.
I mean, you could call it something like the story maker or the storyteller.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, he to this day, he still comes into my store. He's a wonderful person. So not everything in retail is bad. You get the good stories too.
That's the reason why you do it for years and years and years. Like I was in retail for 20 years, not in the same store, but in different stores, different companies, and the different companies have different rules. I mean, basically, retail's all the same up to a certain extent, up to a certain level, and it depends on where your store's located, your clientele, the local demographics, how many problem customers you're going to have. One of the stores I worked in was in a nice upscale neighborhood. Hardly any problems ever. Occasionally you'd have a problem. That was an easy store to work in. Another store was right in the projects. That was a challenge, a store to work in. And the company tended to move you around from store to store. They would start off the trainees in the easy store, and then you would eventually move into the more complicated stores. And you had a good support team in the challenging stores because the people had been there and they'd worked there for 3 or 4 years, and they knew all the customers would come in and their problems, and they would fill you in immediately and get you up to speed, because as soon as you were up to speed there, they could leave. They could go to an easier store, get their batteries recharged. I mean, that's kind of the way it is. So, those challenging stores may seem to be retail hell. They're what make you a better person as a manager in a retail organization. If you have nothing but easy times, you don't develop, and you don't have any stories to tell afterwards.
Exactly.
So, I mean, if you approach that as, man, this is going to be a great story to tell my grandchildren, even if you're not a writer, it's going to be a great story to tell my grandchildren. You can make it through some of the tough stuff in life that way.
Yeah. And just by hearing some of, your retail customers and listening to their life experiences and how they handled them, you take those pointers with you throughout your life. So when you come across a situation similar to that, you can remember back to that story, and maybe, it'll help you be able to solve that problem that you may be facing.
I think when you write, you draw on your own personal experience a lot.
Yeah.
Your main character is going to share some of your quirks and your habits and your attributes and your experiences. I know that's true in my case. I have an alter ego that appears in most of my books. His name's Brent Woods. Brent is what I never had the nerve to be. He gets away with a lot of things. But
do you have an alter ego, Robyn?
No, I am. I feel like I'm. I don't know. I've tried to write fiction before, and I find that I just I'm not. I don't know. Maybe it's the journalism. I feel like I'm stuck to. Well, actually, some stories are stranger than fiction, but I find that I can't really. Yeah, I haven't been able to make a nice persona for myself yet. But that's something I'm going to work on. I'm inspired.
What you have to be able to do is to take the skull off and expose the insides. That's how you write fiction. You have to take something that you're personally uncomfortable discussing and write about it. And you have to set that as a goal. And you may never publish it, you may never show it to anybody else. But if you can create a character that's almost like you, but not exactly, that does all the things that you wish you could do, says all the things that you wish you could have said, that's the basis of fiction for most of the people I know that are writers. They, and they'll tell you up front, yeah, I wish I could have said things like that. And then, maybe if you become successful, you'll have the nerve to say those things to people when the situation arises again. Yeah, fiction's a great thing to learn how to do, to be a good storyteller. And I think most people have it in them to be a good storyteller, especially as you get to be, my age and older. When I was growing up as a kid, I remember grandparents and aunts and uncles, at family reunions and, they come over for visits. They would always sit around and tell stories about the past. And I used to love sitting there listening to them. Okay, that's kind of weird for a kid, but I used to love listening to people tell stories about their lives, what they experienced. And I think all that's still banging around in the back of my head somewhere. I mean, you're a sponge and you absorb all this stuff. And then when you get to be that age, it all starts popping out again. And then you have all of your own experiences to mesh with it. Like I spent a couple of years in Asia. I learned Chinese Mandarin while I was in the Air Force. I came out of the Air Force and I worked in software sales for a while, and then I started working in retail. I sold cars for a summer when I was between jobs. I mean, there's a wealth of experience that you can have. I built custom computers for people. I repaired computers for people. Everything that you do in your life can be used in a book somewhere, and you just have to find the story that allows you to tell it.
Mm-hmm. I love camping, and we would go camping all the time. And one of my favorite things to do while camping is I was always in charge of the spooky campfire story. So, I would always just go whim, just make up some creepy little tale.
Oh yeah, they have to be scary.
There was one story I created out of just looking at my surroundings, and I created a character named Mr. Meadows. I mean, Mr. Meadows. That's just creepy by itself, So I mean, it's kind of neat because the writer can, look at their surroundings and pick certain things and pull them in to create something amazing out of just sit there around them.
Creating something that's never been there before.
Exactly, like Mr. Meadows.
You can invent a whole town.
Yeah.
You can invent a whole world, a whole planet.
Yep.
That's what you can do with fiction. You can't do that with nonfiction. To me, nonfiction's a lot harder to write than fiction.
I agree. Robyn, I have mad respect for you.
Well, we can respect each other equally because it feels like what you do is magic. Like just making worlds appear. That's magic to me.
Oh, well, I think that, you help people achieve their life goals. I mean, that right there, that's magic to me.
Dream sharer.
Yep. Yes.
Like the song. Somebody was telling me today that Fleetwood Mac's Dreams is making a comeback on the charts because of the attention that it's getting from people on YouTube that are listening to old songs and playing them again and giving their reactions. Songs that they've never heard before, and people suggest, "Oh, you need to listen to this song," and all those old artists are like diving down a well and exploring all their work, and then they're all interconnected. It's kind of like the Kevin Bacon thing, where the six or seven layers.
Yep.
I mean, there's all these artists know each other, or they played on albums with one another, or their styles are similar, or something like that. Like Sammy Hagar, was with Van Halen after David Lee Roth had a falling out. And Sammy Hagar, where did he come from? Oh, he was in a band called Montrose. Montrose was a lead guitarist that played with the Edgar Winter Group. The Edgar Winter Group has a guy in it. His name's Rick Derringer, who's also a producer. Rick Derringer produced a lot of other groups. I mean, it's all interconnected, and it's a very tight-knit community. And, the same thing happens with authors to a certain extent, too. Readers will read one author, and then they'll be inspired to read another author because that author mentions in an interview or whatever, their favorite author was. Like one of my favorite authors is Kurt Vonnegut Jr. And a lot of people don't like his books, and a lot of people like his books. But I think Breakfast of Champions by Kurt Vonnegut Jr. is one of the greatest books ever written. It was interesting discussion today. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed meeting you, Robyn.
Yeah, this was very interesting.
And welcome to the family.
Thank you.
We have all kinds of plays on the panda theme.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So I'm discovering. I think my favorite discovery so far was the dark side of the panda.
Oh yeah, dark side of Pandamoon.
Yep.
Pandamoon. That's right.
We have these collections of short stories that are in progress, and we keep adding on to them. Someday they will be published. Someday soon, I hope. Most of our authors have little stories that they never really fully fleshed out into books, or they don't really fit into whatever it is. So I mean, most authors have those things, and they never did anything with them for whatever reason, but they submit them to these anthologies, and it'll expose people to how all these authors write. Mm-hmm. We have, what's the other one called? The 7 Deadly Sins or something like that.
It's the Sins of the Panda.
Yeah, Sins of the Panda. Oh. So it's based on the 7 deadly sins. So yep. you write a story that's based on one of the sins.
Yep.
Okay.
And where did the idea come up for these things? Authors. Yep. Authors said, "Hey, why don't we do an anthology about?" And then I think Sins of the Panda was the first anthology. I think actually. Jeff Messick is the one that suggested that, I think.
Yeah.
And I don't know who suggested the dark side of the Pandamoon, but it's some of these people who write all these awful stories, these horror stories. I write nice and fluffy things,
I do. Yeah. I like, horror.
And having said that, I've got a book coming out pretty soon that's set in an alternate universe version of New Orleans, where the living and the dead exist side by side.
Nice.
Yeah.
I like it.
They work together. I was mentioning that to Nola Nash, who writes about New Orleans, and she said, "Yeah, what's so unusual about that?"